Ciao a tutti! I guess I'm dressed as Wolverine today. And here we are. Wolverine claws. But they're actually pretty uncomfortable because, don't tell TikTok this, but it's actually real stainless steel with guards so you don't cut yourself. I'm gonna put them down. The video I planned to be my next video was not my next video. That's not what this video is. The whole Papa John Awards thing I got bored one night, edited some announcement trailer thing together for it. But, time's passed. So, I turned that into an Instagram post. I'm actually going to turn it into an Instagram series where I do that throughout the years, 2020 and 2019, so on and so on. But, in terms of this video, I'm just going to basically talk about the comic book movies that have come out since I essentially went dark on YouTube. And yeah, that's sort of like a catch-up on comic book movies, as well as a couple horror movies, because a couple of my favorite horror franchises have released 2 new entries, or 1 entry in each of the 2 franchises. And so I'm going to talk about those at the end. There's going to be a rant about one of those franchises, about the direction or misdirection of one of those franchises has taken over the last decade or so. And so, yeah, I guess let's get started. First, we have The Suicide Squad. This is a great movie. However, I do really need to rewatch it. I haven't seen it since theaters. And when I went to see it in theaters, I was in a good mood, but I wasn't in a sort of movie or comic book movie state of mind. I kind of just went because I felt like I had to. But it's still a really good movie. I think I do prefer it over Guardians of the Galaxy, but probably only because it's DC, and I always prefer DC. Nonetheless, still a great movie. I don't know if I'd put it 3rd or 4th on my DCEU ranking. I still really enjoy and love Birds of Prey to death. And for some reason, part of me wants to put Birds of Prey at 3 and The Suicide Squad at 4. Who knows? I still have Zack Snyder's Justice League at 1. And Aquaman at 2. I love that movie so much more than I think most other people do. You have great characters. Obviously, Harley Quinn. You also got Bloodsport. Ratcatcher 2 was an amazing surprise. I didn't expect to love that character as much as I did. Peacemaker is a great sort of villain in that 3rd act. However, his, twist, if you want to call it that, into being a villain was pretty predictable. But I loved that. And then Starro is a lot of fun. Moving on to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I actually enjoyed this movie a lot more than I expected to. I wasn't blown away by the trailers, but I thought the trailers made it look like it has some great action sequences, and it does, especially that tram or bus sequence in San Francisco is great. And I just love kind of what they did with the character, especially like the loss of a mother and the father's quest to get her back. It just puts a lot of heart into the movie, and I love the mythology. It's very rich and easy to explore in future MCU entries, and I loved how they kind of developed the mythology and kind of introduced it. However, I will say it does kind of feel like it just fits into a generic superhero origin movie kind of thing. But it was still a really good entry, a really good version of that generic superhero origin story. Not much to say. I was a big fan of this movie, and I especially loved Awkwafina, and Awkwafina, who played Katie, and I forgot the actor's name, but the one that played, I think it's Xiaoling, Shang-Chi's sister. I was fans of those characters. Now we're going from 2 great movies to Venom, Let There Be Carnage. When I first saw this movie, I think I said I'd give it the same rating as the first Venom, and I stand by that. I would still give it the same rating. But I also said I preferred this to the first Venom, and I think I've changed my mind on that. So this one just doesn't, neither of them sit well with me, to be honest. But this one it was more disappointing in a way. Like, it just feels like a cheesy Joel Schumacher Batman movie from the mid to late 90s. And I just I can't really get out of that. Everything was super, super cheesy. It was presented cheesily. It was acted fairly cheesily. Everything it just didn't feel like what you want a Venom versus Carnage movie to be. And it just doesn't sit well with me at all. I don't have any plans to rewatch this ever. Next we have Injustice. Now I really enjoyed this movie. It's got some negative response, I think, primarily because I don't think it's the Injustice movie people wanted, but it's still a movie about Superman being tricked by the Joker into killing Lois, a pregnant Lois, and I think it does a really good job thematically. It is extremely rushed, but that's really the only criticism I honestly have, is the fact that it's extremely rushed. But it's a great movie. I still really enjoyed it. And now we're on to another disappointment. However, unlike Venom, Let There Be Carnage, I would still give this a positive score, and that is Eternals. The main issue with this movie, in my opinion, is the fact that everything is just stale. Not necessarily bad, but stale. The acting is a great cast. It's one of those movies where it kind of reminds me a little bit of Captain Marvel in terms of the acting performances. The cast is actually really good, and they fit their roles really well. But for whatever reason, the performances they're giving just feel very stale. Like, it doesn't feel like they're necessarily giving it their all. I'm not saying they weren't, I'm just saying it's not what it feels. That's not what comes across. And so there's that, and then the score. The score just feels too dull and generic, and it doesn't help with the suspense. It doesn't help with the emotion. It just makes it feel even more stale. I do like the writing. I like the mythology. One thing I will say in terms of that, though, is especially when you get into the third act, to me, it really just starts feeling like a Power Rangers movie. I mean, they even have like a scene where when they suit up, it like points at them perpendicularly, and they go like this, and all of a sudden they're like suiting up, just like, Morphin Time stuff that you'd see in the Power Rangers, and then they have to combine their powers together to stop, just like how the Power Rangers create the thing. Anyway, it just feels very Power Rangers-like when you get towards the end, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it is something that personally kind of distracted me, but it's done pretty well. I mean, it's when you compare it to other movies that have been similar and have done these Power Rangers-y things, it does it pretty well. And now we have Spider-Man No Way Home. This was an amazing movie. An amazing, awesome movie. I loved it to death. By far, by a long shot, the best live-action Spider-Man movie. It's the only live-action Spider-Man movie, in my opinion, that actually deserves to be called the best. I love the first Amazing Spider-Man a lot more than other people seem to. And I have nostalgia for the first two Raimi movies, but this is the only Spider-Man movie that I think has ever even deserved the title Best Spider-Man Movie. I still prefer Into the Spider-Verse, but in terms of live action, by far the best. It's got great emotional development, and it has fan service, but it's not fan service for the sake of fan service, which is something I'll get into when I get into a couple of different movies. But it actually serves emotional purposes, it serves storyline purposes, it serves like actual purposes. It's not just, hey, 3 Spider-Men. Plus, spoiler alert, the death of Aunt May is very emotional, and they make it feel like it feels paid off because of what they do with her character in previous movies, but especially in this movie with how they treat Aunt May, and even Happy Hogan, who's not in this movie as much as he was, say, in like Far From Home, but when he pops up after the Aunt May death scene, it's like very emotional, paid off very well with Happy Hogan, and absolutely adored this movie. I don't know what else to say. I thought Willem Dafoe plays villains extremely well. I was ecstatic to see him kind of come back as sort of a main villain. the main villain of the movie. Not the only one, but the main one, in my opinion. And he does an amazing job with it. And next, I'm going to briefly mention Rumble, because it is technically loosely, very loosely, based off of a comic book or inspired by a comic book. Not one I've ever heard of, but Wikipedia said so, and I mean, they can be wrong, I guess. I don't know. For its target audience, it's pretty decent, you know. I forgot what I said in my Letterboxd review. I know I said something about it being rushed or whatnot. It's pretty forgettable. But, you know, it's a fun, decent watch. So, moving on. And now we have The Kingsman, the third entry in the Kingsman franchise. And if you view it as a standalone World War I spy action thriller, it works pretty decently. It's a pretty good movie in that respect. However, if you view it as a Kingsman movie in the respect of the previous two movies, this movie lacks a lot of that flair and creativity. Even though I would give The Golden Circle probably the same score as The Kingsman, I'd probably say as a Kingsman movie, The Golden Circle is better, but as a standalone movie, The Kingsman is better. The Secret Service is far and away better than both of them. That's sort of how this just feels. It feels kind of pointless, forgettable within the franchise, but it still has a lot of fun, a lot of heart. And while it does lack some of the creativity that the franchise is known for, I still like the writing in this movie a little better than The Golden Circle as a standalone movie. And it's still some pretty dope action scenes in there, even if they don't have the editing flair and creativity and stuff that the first two movies had. It's still a pretty damn enjoyable movie, in my opinion. I do think the acting in The Kingsman is very top-heavy. Ralph Fiennes gives a good performance, Djimon Hounsou, but then you have people like the Kaiser, which I thought was terrible. And I don't think Rasputin was the best. Next, we have Hilda and the Mountain King. This is based off of a British comic book and a British animated series on Netflix. I was very surprised by it. I haven't seen the animated series or read the comics, but I was pretty surprised by it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think for the target audience, it's really, really good. For me, I probably won't watch it again, but I still really enjoyed it and was very surprised by it. Next, we have Catwoman Hunted. Another one I was actually somewhat surprised by, but also not too much surprised by, because I usually enjoy these direct-to-video DC movies more than most people, I think. I really enjoyed it. I love Catwoman. You know, she's one of my favorite female comic book characters. And it also has my favorite female comic book superhero, that is Batwoman. And not based off of the TV show, it's based off of the comics, why she's my favorite. She was actually probably the best part about this movie was Batwoman as the sort of side character helping out Catwoman. I really enjoyed her involvement in this movie. It is a little rushed. All of these direct-to-video DC movies are very rushed, but it's a fun movie. It's got some nice puns that are cheesy, but they fit perfectly with the tone of the movie, and it doesn't feel like, you know, out of weird left field weirdness like you would get in Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It just feels like fun cheesiness that just kind of fits the movie and the style of movie that they're going for. It's somewhat James Bondy, but with Catwoman. Next, we have Marry Me. Yes, this is based off of a comic book. Look it up. But I have not seen it, so I can't really talk about it. The Batman. I love this movie to death. I was a little hyperbolic. I don't know about in my review necessarily, which is why I'm not going to talk about this because I already made a video review. But I will say I was a little hyperbolic at first when I first saw the movie. But I still stand by the fact that it's going to take quite a movie to knock it off of my number one spot for the year. The only movie I can even envision having a chance of taking it down would be Across the Spider-Verse. And we have another Bat-related comic book movie, Morbius. I'm going to have to somewhat compose myself. I have some unpopular opinions with this one. And all I will say is I fully understand why people don't like this movie as much as me. I think it's far, far from being a great comic book movie. But I honestly loved it. And like I said, it doesn't astonish me that it's getting bad reviews. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score is definitely understandable, all of that stuff. What baffles me, in all honesty, is how emphatically negative the reviews are. And I'm going to basically show my ranking very quickly on the screen of my Spider-Verse movies. And I'm basically going to go through it one by one on why I have Morbius a lot higher than everybody else. First, we're going to start off with Far From Home, which is probably going to be the most unpopular opinion that I have under Morbius. And the main thing I'm going to say is Far From Home, in where movies like Thor Ragnarok and James Gunn movies are amazing at blending the comedy with the seriousness, Far From Home was terrible at it. All of the comedy undercuts emotional development, it undercuts thematic developments, it undercuts even Tony Stark's development throughout the entire universe. The fact that he gave Peter the glasses in the first place, and with what Peter does with the glasses throughout the movie, showcase why he should not have been given the glasses at that point in time, which then undercuts Tony Stark's decision making, and it just undercuts sort of Tony Stark's development throughout the entire universe, and it does not sit well with me. And then you have the Berlin sequence, which is just a tease. It's an amazing sequence, but it happens like in the middle of the movie, and it makes you think you're going to get this badass third act with amazing illusion sequences. And what do you get in the third act? What do you get in the final battle? You get Spider-Man swinging around punching drums. You don't get any awesome illusion sequences. I know technically there's an illusion thing going on, but it's not the same, and it just leaves you with blue balls at the end of the movie. Morbius doesn't have any of that. But don't get me wrong, Far From Home does have better special effects, better cinematography. You know, the fight choreography is better. But the emotional and thematic development and everything just gets undercut in ways that they don't in Morbius, in my opinion. And next we have TASM 2, which is same issue that BVS has, where you just have a bunch of different subplots and plots and whatnot going on that create this ultra convoluted story that just takes so much away from development, takes so much away from any thematic development, any emotional development, character development going on. It all kind of just gets taken away from all of these different storylines trying to compete to be the number one storyline. And in Morbius, it's fairly simple. You don't have a bunch of storylines making it all convoluted. It's pretty simple. The guy tries to cure his uncurable disease. There's unfortunate side effects. His best friend takes the cure thing, and he doesn't care about the side effects, so Morbius has to stop him. It's pretty simple and straightforward in that respect. It doesn't have all of these different plot lines screwing each other up and trying to take away screen time. And then you have the Venom movies. I already talked about Let There Be Carnage, so I'm basically going to focus on the first Venom here. Essentially, you have one scene where Eddie Brock and Venom are mortal enemies. The next scene, they're best friends. Nothing in the dialogue during the fight suggests that they'll become best friends. There's no scene between them to show the development at how they became best friends. It just happened at the snap of a finger. And you don't get that in Morbius. Yes, the development's a little rushed, but you still get to see how Morbius and Milo go from BFFs to mortal enemies. You get to see the arguments that they have, the development they go through to get from point A to point B. You get to see it happen. It's not just, they have to be for the plot. And then you have Spider-Man 3, which in all honesty, for a while was actually my favorite, until about high school, was my favorite Raimi movie. Now I hate it, honestly, just primarily because of the Harry amnesia storyline. It undercuts not just development in this movie, it undercuts development from the previous two movies. Harry's development gets undercut, the love triangle development and whatnot between Harry, Peter, and MJ get undermined, and it just creates this terrible storyline and plotline in Spider-Man 3, which also has a similar problem as TASM 2 with different plot lines coming together. And it just undermines everything. And it pisses me off. Plus, back then I didn't ever watch That 70s Show. Now I watch That 70s Show, and every time I watch Spider-Man 3, I can't imagine how Eric got casted as Venom. It baffles me. That's another thing, I guess. But it really comes down to the Harry amnesia storyline. It pisses me off. And nothing in Morbius is as bad as the Harry amnesia storyline. Say what you want about Morbius. It is far, far from being one of the worst comic book movies of all time. I don't understand how the reviews are so emphatically negative. I understand why they're negative, just not why they're so emphatically negative. Because to me, it's a pretty simple storyline that with some development that you can see and is written in there. Yeah, special effects not that great. It's got some editing issues. But the main two actors do a pretty decent job. And so, yeah. Moving on to horror. I'm going to first talk about Scream 2022, which was really good. I wasn't expecting much, especially since Wes Craven is one of my all-time favorite directors. And it was a little sad that they're reviving it without him, but it was kind of inevitable given how popular the franchise is. And I thought they did a great job. Because I think one thing this movie does really well is it separates itself from the original while also staying faithful in the same way that I think Scream 4 does. Scream 2 is a really good sequel. Scream 3 gets too much hate. But however, it's still, in my opinion, by far the worst in the franchise. But it does get too much hate because it's still a pretty good movie. But the thing is, with Scream 2 and 3... they just feel like extensions of the original. They don't feel like they separate themselves from the original on any atmospheric level or even a thematic level. Yes, they talk about different rules and stuff, and Scream 2 has sort of the films made me go crazy or whatever. They still feel like extensions of the original. They don't feel like their own thing in the way Scream 4 does and in the way Scream 2022 does. And in terms of Scream 2022... I thought the Billy Loomis hallucinations were fan-servicey and didn't really serve any other point other than that. Because you can still have essentially the exact same storyline going on. You can still get away with that whole, don't mess with the daughter of a serial killer line at the end. It would still all make perfect sense if you didn't have the cheesy, fan-servicey hallucinations. But there's only three or four of them. They don't take up too much time. It'd be kind of weird to take too much off for that in terms of ratings. I don't think the requel craze has been around long enough to develop any rules yet. You look at the previous Scream movies, slasher franchises, slasher sequels, and trilogies had been around for decades by the time those movies came out. The Scream 4 movie about remake craze, the remake craze had already been around for about a decade by then. But this requel thing has really only been around since Halloween 2018. Yes, there's technically been some others, but the craze has really only been around since then. You really haven't had too many since then, because Child's Play was more of a remake, not a requel. So there's not really anything to make these rules off of. It seems more like Scream is trying to make rules for the future movies rather than movies that have actually been made. This is kind of inconsequential because to me, I can always just view it as it's a different universe than the one I live in. Maybe they already have a Friday the 13th requel and a bunch of requels in the Scream universe that they can base these rules off of. So, who knows? Plus, they follow their own rules or whatever with their commentary on them. So there's that. Plus, it gets overshadowed by sort of the toxic fandom commentary, social media commentary that they talk about in the movie. And I honestly loved this movie. It's probably my third favorite in the franchise after the original and the fourth. I said it would take quite a movie to knock The Batman off of my favorite movie of the year. It's going to take quite a movie to knock TCM 2022 from being my worst of the year. Or at least least favorite. Not necessarily worst film, which I'll get into, but least favorite film of the year. Because one thing I will say, if it wasn't titled Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if it wasn't a movie within the franchise, if it was just a standalone slasher, I would probably give it 2.5 stars. Maybe 3. Probably not, but maybe. The whole inclusion of the final girl from the original, seeking revenge with a shotgun and stuff, it's a rip-off of Halloween 2018. And then secondly, the main thing that really gets to me is the direction the franchise has been going since the beginning. Not the beginning of the franchise, but since the one that's titled The Beginning. Mainly with 3D, Texas Chainsaw 3D, and this 2022 one. they've lost what the franchise actually is. They're trying to turn it into Friday the 13th or Halloween, where it's just a masked guy going around slashing people. It's just this time it's with a chainsaw, but that's not what the franchise is. That's not what Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not a slasher with a masked man slashing teenagers. It's about a cannibal family trapping teenagers into their community. And so every time they go, they think they found someone that can help them. All of a sudden, there's a twist. They can't help them. And there's a lot you can do with that sort of mindset, even on like a psychological horror level, of having this cannibal family in the middle of the remote Texas. Like, there's a lot you can do with that hasn't been done yet, even from an emotional level. Even if you want to do, like, I think you can easily do an elevated horror movie within this franchise. I might be the only fan of the franchise that would like to see that, but you could definitely do something like that. But they just keep going back and trying to turn it into Friday the 13th or Halloween and just have Leatherface be a masked killer. But that's not what the franchise is. And it really gets on my nerves because while Texas Chainsaw 3D and 2022 do mention family and stuff, it's still just masked Leatherface killing teenagers. That's all it is. And 2017's Leatherface, I actually really do enjoy it for what it is, as sort of a Joker-esque movie, kind of Elseworlds thing, but it's still not the direction the franchise should be going in. And it's something that kind of gets on my nerves with this franchise. And yeah, I will say, however, the bus sequence in 2022's TCM is amazing slasher awesomeness. But I can watch a clip of it on YouTube. I don't have to watch the movie to watch it. And so here's my ranking of the Texas Chainsaw movies. And I will say, yes, I do have Next Generation ahead of 2022. However, I actually gave 2022 a slightly better rating or score because I do think as an individual movie, it's better. But as a Texas Chainsaw movie, it's worse. So this video's longer than probably any other video I ever made. I got a lot going on. I'm going to be moving all over the place this summer. And yes, there's a green screen back here. It was a gift, and it didn't come with a stand. And I tried seeing if I could hang it up back here. It's obviously not big enough. I use an iPhone for my camera, not my microphone, but my camera. And I have it on like the selfie side, and it doesn't really zoom well. But who knows? I'm only going to be living here effectively for like a month. And so who knows what the next place has. I'm going to try. My New Year's resolution actually was to average one YouTube video per month, which means a couple months are going to have a couple of videos because I missed January and February, but we'll see. This summer, I'm probably going to try and do some travel vlogs mixed with nerdy things. I don't know how you would do a nerdy travel vlog in Italy, but I'll try my best. Probably make some bad video with holding my phone, handheld video thing. Who knows what's gonna go on? Who knows what the future holds? But choose. Chow! God damn it, that was bad. Ay, ay, ay. Chow it! God, spit. God damn it. Chow it, dude. God, spit again. Chow it, tutti. And yeah. I don't know what to do here.